Let me just get it up on our screen so we can get going. Okay, if I could just get a thumbs up if everyone sees the presentation. Perfect, thank you. So welcome everyone. This is a Shine a Light on Your Utility Rights presentation. Our presentation today is going to cover very helpful knowledge on how you all can protect yourselves and protect your household regarding your utilities. So some things that we're going to speak about today are how to read your utility bills, what to do when you fall behind on your electric and gas bills, what financial assistance programs may be available, what is a deferred payment agreement, how to use a New York State Department of Public Service complaint process, and utility rate cases in New York State. I know some of these are really important questions that some of you have. So before I move forward, I do want to introduce who PULP is and myself again. My name is Jacqueline. I'm a research associate and communications assistant at PULP. Like Tom said, we're small but mighty. Our nonprofit is of 14 staff members now, and we are slowly growing. And we work throughout all of New York State, helping you all understand everything that is on this slide right now. So getting right into it, what are utilities? Utilities are our essential services. They are electricity, water, heating. We have different heating types, for example, natural gas, steam, deliverable fuels. Our deliverable fuels are the most common ones are usually oil, propane, things that are actually delivered to your house. Telecommunications is also another broad category of phone, cable, and broadband internet. Broadband internet, it's a little tricky, right? It's not technically considered an essential utility, but here at PULP, we do consider it essential because, for example, here we are today meeting virtually, remotely. Without internet, fast internet, how would our daily lives be impacted? So it's interesting as time evolves, internet, and especially in our daily lives, how it is being considered more essential. We have different types of utility providers in New York State. Depending where you live, you might have a Public Service Commission regulated utility or a municipal or a public power authority. For example, Con Edison, NYSEG, National Grid, Central Hudson, National Fuels. These are some of the main Public Service Commission regulated utilities. What does that mean? They're basically overseen by New York State Public Service Commission and Department of Public Service. They are investor-owned companies. They have a monopoly, right? If I live in the Con Edison territory, I can't get utilities from anyone else except Con Edison. And because they have that monopoly, they are regulated by the commission and the department. On the other hand, we have municipal public power authorities. These are publicly owned. For example, Endicott Municipal, New York City Water, Long Island Power Authority, and rural electric cooperatives are some of the most common ones that we see. When we get our bill every month, there's a lot of information on these bills. A lot of times we are a little overwhelmed when we're looking at it. What is on this bill? I don't understand. And we like to break it down. So when you get this bill, you could read it and understand what is it that you're paying for. If you don't feel confident what you're paying for, this might help you understand what are those ins and outs. So we first have our supply charges. Supply charges are not regulated by New York State. This is the cost of energy. When your utility company purchases energy from the open market, they pass that charge directly on to you, the customer. You are basically just reimbursing them for what they paid for. It's not fixed. Like I mentioned, this is being purchased from an open market, so it's considered volatile or variable. When certain global events happen, or even national, right, that might affect the supply chain, I always like to say, for example, COVID, the war of Ukraine. During those times, we saw changes in our bills, especially on the supply charge, because it was impacting our global market. Your utility company charges you the supply charge, but as a customer, you are able to enroll with what is called an ESCO, a third-party supplier. We do caution enrolling into an ESCO, mainly because sometimes you might pay more through an ESCO than what you would with your regular utility company. So if you are interested in looking at what are the suppliers available near me, you can use the New York State Power to Choose website. When you're looking through, just be sure to select the low income participant box when you put in your zip code because certain ESCOs are only allowed to provide supply to low income customers. On the other side, we have delivery charges. This is what you are being charged for being that utility company's customer. So this is what they are charging you to provide you service, meaning the cost of meters, meter readings, customer service, communications, accounting. This is a section of the bill that is regulated by the Public Service Commission and Department of Public Service. I'm sure some of us have heard the news of the National Grid rate cases. We've heard the news of Con Edison rate cases, NYSEG rate cases being filed. What is a rate case? This is where the utility company is requesting to increase what they're charging you. Before they can increase that, they have to go in front of the Public Service Commission and Department of Public Service and ask for permission and show why they're asking for this increase. This is what is going to determine what your basic service charge is going to be. Before we keep reviewing a bill, I do want to cover smart meters. So we understand how does a smart meter impact our bill? There's a lot of questions. Oh, I got a smart meter, my bill went up. How safe is it? How accurate is it? I was happy with my old analogous meter. So for health and safety, smart meters do release radio signals, but they're very similar to a cell phone. I always say if we have a cell phone on us, that's basically the same thing as the smart meter that is outside of our home. And it does meet the FCC safety standards. What about higher bills? A spike may reflect more accurate readings. Sometimes with these old analogous meters, they over time wear down, their accuracy goes down as well. So it might be measuring lower than what it's supposed to. So when a switch is made to a smart meter and accuracy of your readings, and there is more accurate readings, I should say, you might see a difference in your bills. If you are not happy with having a smart meter, you can opt out. You don't necessarily have to have one installed. I think pretty much across the state installations are done, but if you don't want one, you can opt out. Just know that on your monthly bill, there might be an additional fee, and it all depends on your utility company. I like to range anywhere from $9 to $15 of an extra charge every month if you decide to opt out. This is an example. This is a sample bill of a Con Edison bill. Each utility company's bill is a little bit different, the way that they organize it, the way they might call certain things, but the foundation of a bill is pretty much the same. We're going to see what's in yellow, which is your meter number. When was your meter read? What is the reading type, if it's actual versus estimate? If you have a smart meter, your meter reading type should always be actual. It's a remote signal that gets sent, and that company is sending readings every single month of directly from your smart meter. If you have one of the older types of meters, a technician might need to go out to your home and read that. So sometimes that's when we see the technicians come by, they look at the meter and they take down the number. And then what your total usage is. I always say this is probably the most important number of your bill because it tells you what is it that you are consuming. It tells you what in your house, how much energy your household is using to power everything. This bill happens to be both electric and gas. So on the electricity side, we see total usage is kilowatts. On the gas side, we see it the CCFs. We also see what I mentioned before. On the left side, we see the supply charges, and on the right side, we see the delivery charges. On the supply charge, that's where we would see if you are enrolled in an ESCO. This bill happens to not be enrolled in an ESCO, but if you review your bill and you see a different supplier, then you are enrolled with an ESCO. If you do not recall ever enrolling with one, if you're not sure how you got to it, the number should usually be on there for that ESCO, and you could call in and see what are your options to cancel that enrollment. What I want to flag on the delivery side is that basic service charge. There is a basic service charge for both electricity and the gas portion of this bill. This is what you are going to pay regardless of how much you consume. So if you go away for the summertime, if you have a second home and you leave your home and you leave this account on, you're still going to get a bill even if you use no energy. That basic service charge on the electricity side here is $18.77. And on the gas side, it's $27.84. So it is a chunk of money that you are going to be charged every single month, even if there's no energy consumption. You're also going to find your surcharges, any taxes, fees, and also sometimes you might see credits that you get. For example, your low income monthly discount here. So what happens if you are getting your bills, you're falling behind, and you don't know what to do? These are the steps that we usually recommend to protect your home from disconnection or termination. One is pay what you can when you can. Things happen. We understand that sometimes you might get a bill and you might not be able to pay it in full, but you are still responsible for your bill every single month, and a partial payment is always better than none. I want to flag that if you do have a balance, you get charged interest on that bill and on that balance of 1.5%. So a lot of times with that balance, you might see that it starts snowballing a little bit, and it might also be because of the late fees or interest that they're charging you. So it's always to make a partial payment better than no payment when you can. The next step is to communicate with your company. You are their customer and they're there to help you when you need help. Ask the utility company if a shutoff is scheduled. If you're unsure about something on your bill, ask them so they may explain it to you. If a shutoff is scheduled, try to ask for a courtesy hold. Sometimes these holds are of 30 days and allows you time to find assistance and see what solutions are available. There is assistance available, typically through your Department of Social Services or HRA if you're in the city, local charities. And then the next step is to see what protections might apply to your account. There are certain health-related needs in your home. You might be able to get a medical certification. And then not lastly, but the last step that you might be able to take directly with your utility company is to negotiate with them. You might ask for a payment plan or a deferred payment agreement to pay off your balances over time if one has not been offered to you. There are different types of deferred payment agreement. The utility company might offer you something and it might not be affordable. So ask what other options are available. If all else fails, your last step is to try to file an inquiry or a complaint with the Department of Public Service. Some frequently asked questions about terminations. When can a termination happen? A utility company cannot come to your home and just shut your services off whenever they feel like it. There is a process and there is a timeline that they have to follow based on the law. I always like to say there is a 35-day rule. The utility company cannot shut you off until at least 35 days after a missed payment. Let's say my bill is due on the 1st of the month. They must wait 20 days at least for that bill to be past due in order to take any action. They need to give me at least an opportunity to make a late payment. If after those 20 days they do not receive a payment, no action is taken on my account, then a termination notice has to be sent out to me. This termination notice is a warning. Hey, we need you to take an action on your account, enter into a payment agreement, pay off this balance, and that needs to be sent out at least 15 days. So that's where those 35 days come. At least 35 days after a missed payment before you can be shut off. These shutoffs are also limited in when they can happen, from Monday through Thursday from 8 in the morning until 4 p.m. So when are they off limits? When they cannot shut you off on Fridays, weekends, public holidays. So I like to say, for example, now on Monday, Labor Day, pretty much offices, everything is going to be closed. Utility companies should not be out there knocking on people's doors, turning off services. On any day that the company's main office is closed, shutoffs are not allowed as well. In New York State, we do not have a winter moratorium or winter shutoff ban as some other states might have. What we do have is an agreement between the utility companies and the state that at the 2-week period at the end of the year, the holiday period, they have agreed to not do shutoffs. There are also some cold weather protections. If the weather reaches 32 degrees or below, they are not allowed to do shutoffs. I also do want to put a disclaimer out there that I know some individuals on this call today might have second homes out of state. All of the rules that I'm talking about today apply to New York State only. If you live, let's say, in Florida, California, Pennsylvania, wherever you might go, the rules might be a little different out there. So it's really important to try to find if there's a PULP like us out there, or try to do some research to see if the rules are a little different. There are also some additional protections on extreme heat. Depending on your utility company, there might be a certain temperature that triggers that shut-off ban. For example, for NYSEG, which has one of the lowest ones in the state, if the weather is forecasted to be 85 degrees on that day, they're not allowed to do shut-offs. If you have Con Edison, for example, on the day that it is forecasted to be 90 degrees, they are not allowed to do shutoffs one day before, the day of, and 2 days after. So each utility company is a little different. So it's really important to know, hey, I'm falling behind on my bill. It's the summertime. It's going to be really hot tomorrow. And they told me that they're going to be coming out. Check the weather so you know to protect yourself and let them know, hey, it's above 95 degrees here, National Grid. You can't shut me off. Some other household protections that might help you are medical, elderly, blind, disabled, and life support equipment protections. Medical certifications are used for households that have medical vulnerabilities. So I always like to say, if you are concerned about your health and a shutoff, speak to your doctor. You can get a certification letter to be sent in and apply a 30-day protection. There are specific requirements that this doctor has to follow when writing this letter. A lot of times a utility company has also a form, a specific form that you can use. That letter, if the doctor chooses to write it, has to be on an official letterhead, include the patient's name and address, which must match whatever is on the account. Include the doctor, or I should say medical provider's contact information, state license number, and most importantly, it has to have a statement that says that the loss of utility can worsen the medical condition. These protections last 30 days and can be renewed, but when they are renewed, a lot of times a utility company will ask you for a financial statement. This is where they ask, what is your income? What are your expenses? So that you could show that you're going through hardship and that you still need this medical protection applied. EBD, or elderly blind disabled protections, is a coding that offers extra shutoff protections, mostly enhanced notifications, and it also helps the utility company track which households are vulnerable. A lot of times, a utility company will not place this coding on the account unless all household members are elderly, blind, or disabled, or children. So I know a lot of times in multi-generational homes, for example, we have mom, dad, children, and grandparents. Sometimes it might be a little hard to put that EBD code in there because mom and dad are not considered elderly, blind, or disabled. If that EBD coding is denied, I would still recommend you to try to get a medical certification for any vulnerable persons in the home. Medical letters can still delay the shutoff and protect you without the EBD coding. And lastly but not least, we have life support equipment. When we talk about life support equipment, we're usually speaking about ventilators, oxygen concentrators, things such as sleep apnea machines, asthma nebulizers. Those are not considered life supportive. Again, I would recommend you to speak to your doctor, see if you could get a medical certification for those. Life supportive equipment means it is necessary for your day-to-day life. It does require a medical certification. They're similar to the medical certifications. Utility companies might have a specific LSE form. And utilities must prioritize restoration and avoid disconnections to home with LSE codings. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Patrick. So Patrick, you can take it over from here and just let me know when you need me to go to the next slide.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Hi, everyone. My name is Patrick O'Brien. I'm a staff attorney here at PULP. So where to find assistance? Usually one of the first things we suggest is your local social services program. So that could be Department of Social Services, or like Jacqueline said, HRA is in New York City, and it might be called, something different depending on where you live. So there's the Home Energy Assistance Program, otherwise known as HEAP, and that opens every year, hopefully, in November, depending on what's going on with the federal government. But we do expect it to hopefully open in November, and that is offered every year. And there's also other HEAP funded grants. There's Emergency HEAP, which opens in January. So that's like an emergency um, assistance program. Then there's Repair and Replace, which opens in October. That's a program that will offer assistance for repairing and replacing your system. Then on the flip side, there's Cooling Assistance, which opens in spring. And there's also an emergency energy assistance generally through the social services program. So it's important to keep in mind, if you're seeking financial assistance from your local DSS, that these are all separate programs. So you could be in the regular HEAP program, get emergency HEAP, and also get a one-shot deal, which is kind of like the local DS, like the local social services financial assistance. So, you can kind of think about it like these are federal, and that's, kind of the on the ground local assistance. So it can be a little confusing, but just know that, there are different programs usually at your local DSS, and they all kind of do different things. They might have different requirements, but you might be eligible for one or all of these. Um, Aside from DSS and sort of government assistance, we always recommend to look at your local charities. So Catholic Charities is a big one. You don't have to be Catholic to apply for assistance through them. I always like to point that out. Other religious affiliated organizations can offer assistance. United Way, 211. Salvation Army is another one that might offer assistance. And also look into like more localized, nonprofits. So for example, like if you're a veteran, there might be a veteran nonprofit that offers something, um, and some health nonprofits. So this is kind of where being familiar with like where you're living, and maybe finding a pulp like organization where you live, or contacting us so we can help you. I know we do have an internal list of local charities throughout the state that we can provide if you give us a call too. Next slide. Okay, there we go. And okay, so monthly discount program. This is otherwise known as EAP, Energy Affordability Program. Um, all of the utilities in New York State offer this program, and it's a really great program. A lot of people sometimes don't really know about it. I personally have never heard about it until I started with PULP. It's a really simple form. It's kind of just like your name, account information. You can either, I would check your utility company. You might be able to apply online or through like your online portal, or you can um, go to one of the PULP events and apply if we have the forms on file or utilities there, or you can mail in the form. Um, but yeah, like what you need to apply, like I said, it's pretty simple. The one thing I like to point out is the proof of eligibility. They are sometimes a little strict with that. So for example, they want your award letter to show. So if you're on, um, SNAP or something like that, make sure you have the award letter, not necessarily just like, a receipt or showing that, you've received SNAP for a month. It's good to always have like the actual award letter. And it's a little hard to see, but on the form itself, it does have all of the qualifying programs. So if you're in any of these, you automatically apply for the energy affordability program. So there's Medicaid, SNAP, and a bunch of other stuff. So you just check that box, provide the qualifying award letter, and apply, and you should be able to get in. And basically, what it is a monthly discount program on your bill. Um, there's different tiers for it, which they kind of calculate using their own thing and your income. but it's pretty helpful, and it's if like I said, if you get Medicaid or any of these other things on the form, you automatically apply, and there's really no harm in applying. And you do usually need to recertify every year, um, and that process varies by utility, and it's usually the recertification process is easier than actually applying for the first time. Um, Next slide. This is really exciting, but the New York State has expanded EAP. This is because, due to in part a lot of, customers contacting us who were maybe just over the income threshold um, for EAP and did not qualify or weren't in, some of those qualifying programs. So this is a way to expand that EAP program. Um, to people in, customers in New York State who are below the median income, which you can see in the bottom right. That's the threshold. It's like about 76,000 for a 4-person household. Is a state median income, and low income level is 64,300 for a 4-person household income. And this is going to launch January 2026. So if you're Central Hudson or NFG, that might launch a little later, but it's generally sort of the same thing. It is the same thing as the EAP program. It's just an expansion of it to get more customers in it who maybe aren't at the lowest income level but are still struggling with their utility bill. Next slide. Deferred payment agreements. Now, these payment agreements vary by utility. They are, sometimes a little difficult to work with in terms of getting into a DPA. And one thing I definitely like to point out, and I'm going to say it early on before I forget, is that usually, when you're in a deferred payment agreement, that payment agreement is something that is in addition to your monthly bill. So, for example, if your electricity bill is $200 for August and you're in a deferred payment agreement for like a minimum of $10 a month, you owe your monthly bill plus whatever your payment agreement is. So it's not just like your monthly bill will only be $10. That's to pay down your balance and your like older arrears. You still are responsible for your monthly, your normal monthly bill. Yeah, so like I said, it's agreement to pay over accumulated balances. Usually it's in writing. Sometimes they offer you DPAs, verbally or over the phone or in person. So one thing I would recommend is if you're working with the utility company or working with us through a utility company, make sure you get that in writing and sign it. That way, you're on the same page as the utility and there's just a record of it so it doesn't get lost. And again, it must be tailored to your financial circumstances. They might ask for a financial statement. Jacqueline kind of brought that up earlier. Sometimes they ask for those for medical coding, but they'll also ask for a financial statement for to get into a deferred payment agreement. Yeah, so the lowest agreement is 0 down, $10 a month. That's not typical of something they offer right away. So, that would be a great time to reach out to PULP or another organization like PULP if you're in a different state of, let's say they want $300 down or 1,000 down and, something like a few $100s a month and you can't pay that. That's something we can help negotiate with the utility on your behalf to get you into an agreement that works for you. Next slide. Department of Public Service. So I'll start with the left side of the slide. This is more of our direct service work area of the Department of Public Service. So, let's say you're contacting a utility about an issue. You have a shutoff, or you're, you want to get into a deferred payment agreement or they're not working with you on a deferred payment agreement. Um, you exhausted, calling them, contacting them, and you try reaching out to PULP, and let's say like they're not working with us. This is kind of like a last resort. I kind of like to call it. You can either file an inquiry or complaint with the Department of Public Service. And essentially, what this does is it escalates, your issue with the utility company to the utility company, and it kind of expedites some sort of resolution, right? So a utility company usually has an escalation team that or person that specifically deals with some of these complaints that come in through DPS, and they usually try and resolve, these complaints and issues with the customers in a pretty quick fashion. So this definitely isn't the first, thing to do if you have an issue with the utility. I would definitely advise contacting the utility, seeing what you can do first, contacting an organization like PULP, and then, kind of when all else fails, you can issue a complaint. And then the Department of Public Service, on the right side of this, Jacqueline kind of mentioned this earlier of what a rate case is. This is basically when a utility, goes to New York State and they say, we need X amount of money, we want to raise the delivery charges by this amount. And, they present that to New York State. And it's more complicated than that, but that's basically what it is, right? In terms of how it affects consumers, it's, everyone wants to know, like, how much is my bill going to go up, right? So who's involved? It's the utility company, DPS staff, advocates like PULP, and the public. So these are like the four boxes, of people involved. And, they usually, it's 11-month process, so it is a long time. And, all these negotiations are going on. Everyone kind of has their own agenda. And it's highly encouraged if, your utility has a current rate case to get involved. You can submit testimony online, or testimony comments online. There are usually in-person hearings where you can do in-person comments. And really, we really try and encourage, our customers to get involved with, their local utilities rate case, to, get their voices heard. And politicians also, like local politicians in the state, are getting increasingly involved too. So it really is a pretty big effort, and there's a lot of people involved. And this is a way to kind of know what's happening with your utility, what you can expect with your bill, and get your voice heard. Next slide. When to call PULP. So we also have some self-advocacy materials too, of a checklist of things you can do before you call us, which we might be able to send to you after this presentation. But an important thing to do is gather your documents. So, it would be, good if before you contact us to have a recent bill or a few recent bills. Try calling your utility first. Go to your local DSS or public benefits office and see if you can get some financial assistance, if that's the issue. And again, as a last resort, we can help you with filing an inquiry or complaint. So, the most common, reasons people call PULP, right? So it's either, a big one is financial assistance or getting into a deferred payment agreement. One thing to note is PULP does not offer direct financial assistance. I always like to remind folks of that. We can, of course, refer you to organizations that do that, but we do not, we don't provide financial assistance. So financial assistance and, issue paying your bill is a big one. I saw some comments in the chat about meter issues. That's also another big area. Various meter issues. So issue with your meter or shared meter issues, especially for folks in apartments or New York City. Smart meter issues, that's another, big one of, people having issues with their bill going up when they have a smart meter, or they think their smart meter is not working correctly. So it can really, those are just some examples of, of reasons to call PULP. Um, and honestly, if you think there's something wrong with your bill, you're not sure what, or something has changed, you can always reach out to us and we can take a look. You don't actually have to know what your issue might be, but we can also help you troubleshoot and figure that out. Or if you just need some help figuring out your bill, or um, changing the name on your account if you moved, or anything like that. If you can't get in touch with the utility or need help doing, we can also help with. Next slide. Yeah, so I guess that was the last slide. Again, my name was Patrick. My colleague Jacqueline, our bilingual research associate and comms assistant. All of our information is below at the slide. You can email us. We have a hotline and a fax. Our hotline is monitored during normal business hours, Monday through Friday. We check it pretty regularly, and we do use, just for your reference, we do use an answering service for that. Well, they'll just ask you some information, just basic contact information, and then it gets relayed to us, and then we reach out as soon as possible. We do triage our calls. So, for example, if you have a shut off notice or you're already shut off, um, we try and prioritize those over some general inquiries, but we do try and reach out to everyone as soon as possible. But for emergency situations or anything like that, we do try and get back to those folks sooner rather than later. But I think we can open it up to some questions, either probably in the chat, I think is where
Yeah.
they will
Thank
be.
you so much,
Okay,
Patrick, and thank you
you're
so much,
welcome.
Jacqueline. Really do appreciate it. So now that the main presentation is over, we are going to end the recording if it hasn't ended already.